understanding Active Directory. What is that? What is Active Directory? Um, so in every organization, we need to have a way of managing the user accounts, managing the resources, managing the groups, and then also managing permissions, how or who gets access to what within the organization. We need to have a way of managing that. So the Active Directory, it allows us to create user accounts. It allows us to assign permissions to the users, resources, objects, groups. So we can assign permissions to all of those. In an organization where there are no accounts, it becomes difficult for you to do what we call the AAA, the auditing part. You can't audit who has done what within the organization. So it's the same as a country. So the Active Directory domain services within organizations, it works the same way as the Department of Home Affairs. So the Department of Home Affairs, if a child is born, when a child is born, what Department of Home Affairs does is that child has to be registered so that they can be identifiable within the country's domain, right? So within the organizations, we also have our own Home Affairs, which we call it the Active Directory Domain Service. So this is the department, in a sense of the government sense. It is like a department that we use to control who is or identify users within the organization. So Home Affairs, if we want to identify Josiah, when he was born, he was assigned an ID number, a unique ID number, right? And then there are other links that links Josiah to his family tree, like who's your mom, who's your dad, and all of that information. Home Affairs keep that information on their database. So the Active Directory within the organization structure, it works as the Home Affairs, the Department of Home Affairs. It's just that here, Active Directory Domain Services, what we are in charge of is we assigning ID identification to the users, to the resources, to devices, to objects that we have within the organization so that we can know who's doing what within the organization. For example, if anyone commits a crime, right? The Home Affairs have the fingerprints of that person. So we can go to Home Affairs and be like, okay, so and so committed a crime. Let's check the fingerprints to who's this person, right? And then we identify that person. So it's the same on the Active Directory. If someone deletes a file, okay, maybe they deleted by mistake or they intentionally deleted that. We need to know who deleted what file. And then how do we know that? Because we have an ID for each and every person who exists within our network, right? So Active Directory will allow us to keep track of all the resources, of all the users that we have within our network. All right. So that's an Active Directory there. Active Directory Domain Services, all right, abbreviated as ADDS. So that's just like your Active Directory Domain Services. And then, okay, that's the overview of ADDS, physical components, logical components. The overview, I've just given you an overview of an AD, Active Directory Domain Service. What is that? And then we have things like your protocols. What are protocols? So protocols in the networking side or in the IT side, these are rules that govern the communication between devices. So they all need to have the devices in order for them to communicate. They all need to speak the same language or follow certain rules. They all need to follow the same rules in order for them to be able to share knowledge or share information or share resources or coexist in the same network. They need to follow the same protocols. So protocols are just like the rules that govern the communication within the devices within a network. And then we have what is authentication. So authentication within the networking part or within the IT side, it starts with us creating a user account. So when someone new or when HR employs a new person at advanced assessment, so it would be Josiah's responsibility to create, to onboard that person. So onboarding process, HR will give us the documents of this person that we're onboarding. So they will have the information, their name, their last name, their job role, all the personal information of this person who's coming into our organization, the person that we're onboarding. So we start the authentication part with us, the IT department, where we create a username, which can be the email address, and then we create a password for that person. All right. So whenever this person logs into our network, they need to present, they will be prompted with the username and password. So they will type in their username and then their password. And then where is the username coming from? We created that as the IT department for this person to say, okay, this is your ID number. Since we are Home Affairs, this is your ID number. This is what we're going to use to identify you on our network. So the user will create an account. We will create an account for the user. The user will change the password. And then authentication, that will be a process whereby they are logging into our network, right? And then the system will, when they type in their username and password, that information will be taken to our database, to our Active Directory. And then the Active Directory will compare the given credentials with what we have on our database to say, okay, do we have Josiah within our database? Is this the correct password? Then if it is the correct password, then you get granted access to that system, all right? So that is authentication. Authentication is just a process whereby the system is verifying that, are you the person that you claim to be? Are you part of this network? Do you belong here? All right. And then the authorization part, since we have authenticated you to our network, you are part of the advanced assessment network. All right. We have authenticated you. The system has verified that, are you Josiah? Is your password Josiah 123? Yes, it's correct. You are authenticated. You are part of this network. Now, number 2 will be authorization. And then we'll say now, Josiah, what is it that you are authorized to do at advanced assessment? Right? And then all this will be determined by your role. So as the IT department, we'll look at what HR hired you to do at advanced assessment. So if you are part of recruiting department, that means now we need to authorize you, or we need to grant you authorization to resources that you will need for you to be able to do your everyday job under the recruiting department. So recruiting department, you find out, okay, maybe you need access to a phone, you need access to a specific software, or you need all of those things. What you need access to, we grant you access to that. That is authorization. What is it that you're authorized to do within the network? All right, so that is authorization. And then here on my slides, there's one piece that is missing. So we call it the triple A. The first A is authentication. The second A is authorization. The third A is auditing or accounting. So accountability or accounting or audit in the end there, we need to know who deleted what file and then when did you delete that and all of that. So the audit part, everyone is held accountable for your action. So whatever you do within my network, as a network administrator, I should be able to go back and check with, okay, who created that file, who deleted that file, who added this to my network. I need to be able to do that. So we have the first A, which is authentication. The second A, which is authorization. The third A will be accounting, accountability. I need to hold people accountable for the actions, their actions within my network. I need to be able to do forensics in the end to say, okay, who looked into this system and then what did they do in my network? I need to be able to do that. All right, so why deploy ADDS? So Active Directory Domain Services, why do you deploy that? I've already explained that this is our Home Affairs within the corporation, right? This is the Department of Home Affairs, which is in charge of identification of the devices that exist within this network. Devices, users, resources, objects within this network. So we need to identify them. Okay, centralized network management, and then also the Active Directory Domain Services. What it does, it offers us a centralized network management. So we have one platform, we have one place where we can go to and then look at most of the things and say, okay, who who has access to what and all of that. So we have centralized network management. We have one portal. So our controls are not dispersed, or they're not all over the network, like they're not on different devices. They're in one device, like which would be our server. So we have centralized that network management. So we go to one central point to manage this. All right. And then requirements for installing ADDS, overview of ADDS, and then the DNS. What is a DNS? We'll look at that. So a DNS, okay, I'll get to that part of the DNS. And then protocols that we use, we said protocols, these are just like the rules that govern the communication within a network. So one of the protocols is LDAP. You'll hear this about this protocol in your IT career a lot. So it uses X500 standard based on the TCP IP. So the TCP IP stands for Transport Control Protocol, and then the IP is Internet Protocol. So it uses those protocols for communication. So the LDAP is just like a method of assessing, searching, and modifying a directory services. So we use it for accessing, searching, and modifying a directory services. A directory services is like your phone book, the old phone books. It has all the information about the people that you might want to contact and all of that. So the directory services, it has all that information that we need within the data, within the central management communication of the Active Directory, right? So we have what we call a client-server model. I'm sure you have heard of this, the client-server model. Let me see if I can draw that just to give you a better understanding of what that is. Let me just do this. Morning, how are you? No. Huh? 8:30, man. You're late. You're coming at 9. So now, what was I? Okay, I wanted to look at the client server concept. So the client server concept, so this will be our server that we're going to configure today. Active Directory. Yes, right. Active Directory DS there. Okay, I'm not writing nicely there. Let me just put it there. So AD DS, right? All right, so this is my Active Directory domain server. And then here on the side, I have client computers. So the concept of the client server is that, and maybe this one is another. Okay, so here is our server, Active Directory server, right? So this server can be an Active Directory server. It can be a DHCP server. Let me click there. So this server can be many things, right? It can be Active Directory, let's say ADDS server. It can be an FTP server. It can be a DHCP server, DNS. So you can see this server can be many things. So the client server concept is that, let me just do that, the client server. So the client server concept is that These are clients. So these devices are clients. And then this is our server. So these clients, they are always requesting what? Services from the server. So hence we call it a client server concept, right? So it's a client server concept. These clients, what do we mean by services? For example, if this device wants an IP address, let's say it's the first time connecting to my network, it will go to what? To the server. And then the server will release what? An IP address. And then if this one wants, let's say you type in google.com, the DNS is the one that will resolve that. So this device will speak to what? To the server. The server will resolve google.com to an IP address. And then if you want to access files, we're no longer storing files here on this one computer. We can keep all our files where? On the FTP server. So if this guy wants to access the same file, he can go to the FTP server. This one wants to access the same file, goes to the FTP server. So here, that's why we call it a client server concept. These are clients requesting services from what? From a server. So this is our server. And then again, here for authentication, right? This is the Active Directory domain service. If this one logs into this computer, this laptop, if it's part of a domain. So if they log into this computer using their username and password, this system will check in with what? With the server, Active Directory domain server, right? And say, okay, do we have this username and password in this account? And then once the server verifies, you get authenticated to a network. Get the idea? So that's why we call it a client server concept, because we have these clients requesting services from what? From this. We can even add a print server. Anyone wants to print, even though there's a printer connected here on our network, maybe we have a printer here. Let's say this is our big printer. So anyone wants to print, it goes to the print server. The server will check, okay, this person do they have permissions to print out anything on our printers? Then if it finds that, okay, you have permissions, then it sends that request to the printer. So this server, it has everything. That's why we on the first slide, the centralized network management, we spoke about centralized network management. So everything is on this part. So everything is controlled here. Yeah. So everything is centralized network management, right? Let's say network management. Everything happens here on the server. So we manage this, and then we will connect these devices. We will connect these devices to a domain, put them in a domain. Once they become part of a domain, so here's another thing with the devices that are in a domain. Let's say this is Josiah this side, right? Let's say Josiah is using this laptop, and then he has his password, Josiah123, and then here we have Billings there, and then Billings123 password. So on these, if these devices are part of a domain, Josiah can log in on Billings laptop with his username and password on Billings laptop, and then he can gain access to that because this device is part of a domain, and then that account is Josiah will be granted access to his files in a server, even though he's using who? Billings account as Billings laptop. So you also, Billings, you can move to Josiah's laptop, log in with your username and password, and then you gain access. So here's a difference. Right now, your laptop is not part of a domain. So the username and password is saved where for your laptop. There's a file inside Windows 10 or whatever operating system that you're using where your username and password is kept there. It's kept when? On this PC, right? So that means if you try to take this username and password, try to log into this PC, you won't have access to that, right? Because that file that has your username and password is where it's on this PC. But now on a domain account, where's your username and password? The username and password are this side in a domain. So we keep them on this domain. So when you are logging into this PC with the username, this PC is part of a domain. So if it's part of a domain, it will check your username and password, not in this file for the local username and password. It will check your name where? From the server side. Hence, you can move, we can move Josiah here, and then he goes to maybe this one's my laptop. And then Josiah can also log in on this same laptop with his username and password, and then grants him access to his files and everything on our domain. You get the idea? The difference is that now the username and password is no longer stored where? On the local device. On the domain, it is stored where? On our Active Directory. You get, so this is why we have the Active Directory domain services. So we can share resources, we can move around accounts and all of that. Okay, coming back to this side. So now we know what a client server model. So a client server model, that is where we have a server and then clients that are requesting services from a server. All right. And then we have touched on this. Authentication is the process of verifying a user's identity on a network. We just want to see if this is really Billings. You create an account for Billings, and then what's the password? Billings 123. So authentication will be just a system verifying that are you the person that you claim to be. Huh? Yeah, so it's just like verifying. And now we have, on terms of authentication, we have multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, okay, we'll talk about that later on. But it's just like where we don't only use one item to identify who you are. For example, back in the day, we only used to use like your password only to verify, okay, are you the person you claim to be? So now we add layers. We have your password, and then we send an OTP via Microsoft or whatever other things, biometrics and all of those, just to verify that are you the person that you claim to be. So authentication includes two components, right? Interactive log-on grants access to a local computer. So interactive log-on, so prompt you for your username and password. And then network authentication grants access to network resources. So interactive log-on, you will type in, it will prompt you, the system will prompt you your username and password. And then you type that, and then it gets verified in our database. And then once you are authenticated, you have access to network resources. So when we talk about network resources, we're talking about files, folders, printers, servers, all these other devices we have in our network. All right, authorization is a process of verifying that an authenticated user has permissions to perform an action. So authorization is just a process of verifying that an authenticated user has permissions to perform an action. We have authenticated you. Now, authorization, we just want to see, do you have permissions to perform certain actions? Certain actions can be permissions to delete a file, because we can grant different permissions. Like we can say, okay, Josiah, your permissions on this file is to read only. And then for Billings, your permissions on this file, you have read, delete, edit permissions on the file. So depending on your level of authority within the organization or your role within the organization, right? So security principals are issued security identifiers. So security principals can be also divided with the IDs to be identified on our network. So security principals are issued security identifiers when the account is created. So when we create an account for you, you get an ID. I think I'll also show you on Linux how these are. So each account is assigned what? An ID. So when you create an account, that account will be assigned an ID to be easily identifiable within our network. So user accounts are issued security tokens during authentication that include the user's security identifier and all related groups to SID. So sometimes we might also add you to groups. So your account or your ID would be assigned IDs to say, okay, you belong to this group, he belongs to that group, and all of that. So let me quickly show you what I'm talking about here, the IDs. Let me see if my Linux machine is running. Uh, yes, I am sharing the screen. Josiah, I can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir, I can see it.
Let me just, I want to also demonstrate this part of the ID there that is assigned to. Let me open my Linux machine. Where is my Linux still? So today we'll look at how to create user accounts on Linux and Windows machines. All right, I want to switch on my Kali here, and then since we are still on the ID part, so we can quickly look at that.
Hey, can you see my screen, guys? Okay, just give it a second and maybe we can come to. Yes, yes. Okay, good stuff. Let's get started, guys. This activity won't be too long because, as I said, it is one activity. There's no summative and formative to this one. This is the only document that you'll be filling in apart from your POE and your log. Okay? So the first question asks us, describe the characteristics.
Huh? Maybe that's the yesterday one. That's yesterday link. So every time when we join class, you go to the our class teams. Then you will see there's a part that says join. Go to our class teams and then go to general. There's a part where you can click to join. All right, so I said I want to just quickly check the accounts for you, right? So let me say CD. So you can see this in Linux, these are the user accounts, right? So we have this one user account, and then it is an account number. So you can see it is not an account like account ID. So it's 1,000, and then this is another user account. You can see the numbers, what? 1,001, and then 1,002, 1002 there. And then, so these are accounts. So when you create an account within this system, it is assigned what? A number, an identifier. So user accounts are, so check here, security principals are issued security identifiers. So in the security ID, include the user's security ID and the selected group ID. So every time when we create an account within these systems, they are assigned a number. For example, let me quickly show you how to create an account on a Linux system. Let me say, let's say on Linux, when we add a user, you type in a command called add user. Let me add Josiah to this account. Add user Josiah, and then press enter. It says only root may add user or group to the system. So I don't have permissions to do that. So I need to get to be a sudo or an administrator. And then Kali, a password. Okay, it's complaining about something. Why is it not happy about? All right, so it doesn't like the capital letter. Okay, so I've added Josiah there. You can see adding user Josiah and then adding new group Josiah. Can you see every time when you create an account here, the user is given what? A security ID. So adding new group Josiah, there is his ID, right? Adding new user Josiah, there is his ID there with group Josiah, right? Creating home directory. And then I can assign a password, let's say Josiah 123. Let's say Josiah 123. And then full name, now you need to add more details about his account. Full name, let's say Josiah. So is this information correct? And then, so the reason why I came to this side, check here. So we said user accounts are issued security IDs, right? Tokens during authentication that include the user security ID. So we've verified, we've seen that when you create an account for users, they are assigned a security ID. And then shared resources on a network include access control list that define who can access the resources. So an access control list, this is like a list with the rules that specify, okay, who can access what within your network. So this is you with the rules, right? So this is you applying the rules. Access control list, you are controlling who has access to what within your network. All right, security token is compared against the discretional access control, which is a DEX on the resource, and access is granted or denied, right? But the features of this, okay, I'll come back. So the features of an Active Directory domain service are centralized directory. We spoke about this, right? And then single sign-on. So single sign-on is whereby you sign in once and then you gain access to different resources. You don't have to keep on typing in your username and password to do different things on the network. So once you sign in once, so single sign-on is just like a concept of you signing on once to my systems, my network, and then you don't have to keep on typing your password. If you want to print out a file, you don't have to type your password there for doing that. If you want to access like maybe a recruitment software, if you are part of this domain, you don't have to retype now your username and password. Already the software will pick up that, okay, you have permissions to do 1, 2, 3. So the single sign-on access is just like that concept of you signing in once to my network, and then the other systems or resources that I have in my network, they already pick up that, okay, this guy he has access to this and that. All right. So integrated security, so we have everything in one platform where we can control the permissions, what access you have to different things within our organization. So we can control that under the Active Directory domain services. Remember the example that I gave in the beginning was that the Active Directory domain services is similar to the Home Affairs. This is where we create IDs. This is where we create profiles. This is where we can pick up the family tree. Okay, you were born place, who's your mom, who's your dad, which family do you fall under, who are the other people that you might be related to. So the Active Directory domain services, it gives us that. And then the scalability part, this is where the concept of scalability is whereby we can, when we talk about scalability networking, is whereby you can easily grow your network without affecting the existing users. For example, when I say scalability on Active Directory domain service is that when I have 100 users, and then now let's say HR says, okay, there are now new 10 or 20 people that you need to add on a domain. When I add those new people, the number increases, right? So I'm scaling up the existing number of users within my network. So when your network is scalable, it means that you can grow your network without affecting the existing users. So when I add new users, you won't be affected in terms of networking part, the bandwidth won't be affected and all of that. And then I can easily add new people without affecting the existing user. So that's how, or what we mean when we say, okay, this network is scalable, or you have added scalability to your network. Common management interface centralizes network management by providing, so ADDSS DS centralizes network management by providing single location and set of tools for managing user and group accounts. So I have one platform that I go to when I want to create user accounts, when I want to add people to groups, right? Single location for assigning access to shared network resources. This is Active Directory. I'm doing everything on one platform. Directory services for AD, DS enabled applications. So even applications can be assigned permissions because there are some other applications that will require data from another application. So you need to assign those applications permissions to be able to retrieve information from other applications. So they also can be assigned access to different parts. You've ever seen, like, when you talk about application requesting access, have you ever seen, like, when you install, like, let's say a new application on your phone, it asks for permissions to access your photos. It asks for your photos, your phone numbers, and all of those. So yes, within the Active Directory domain services, we can also assign permissions to applications to say, okay, you have access to location. Some applications we block them for like access to location. For example, if you've downloaded a calculator, then now a calculator application start asking you for location, start asking for access to your photos, for your phone numbers, and all of that. You're like, okay, you're just a calculator. Why do you need access to all of these things, right? So in the Active Directory domain services, we have a concept called the least privilege. So the least privilege, we assign permissions to users, groups, and applications to resources that they need to complete their everyday task. So a least privilege in a concept of these applications that we install on our phone will be, for example, a calculator on your phone. Does it really need your location? Does it really need your phone directory? Does it need there are certain things that your calculator doesn't really need. So the concept of least privilege, I will grant access to my calculator application to only the things that it needs to perform its task. That's the least privilege there. So it also, it's a good way of applying security within your network. Okay, so here on the directory service for 80, I was just trying to just take you through the process of applications also need to be monitored, also need to be assigned permissions to what exactly they need access to. I can't have an application collecting unnecessary data. I can't have a calculator collecting my contact details. I can't have an application, a calculator application collecting my location. It doesn't need location to perform calculations. And then options for configuring security policies that apply to all users and computers. So within the Active Directory services, this is where we configure policies. What are policies? A policy can be, the simple policy that I usually use as an example on this is a policy to enforce the password reset. To say, okay, your password will be valid for 3 months. After 3 months, you have to renew the password. And then I also can have a password for saying you can't use the password that you used maybe a year ago. So for a period of 1 year, you can't use the same password, right? So you're going to change maybe and use a new password. So those are policies again that we can have within our network. So policies that apply to all users, computers. So again, control is not only to users only. Controls or security policies or security controls, they also need to apply to users, computers, applications. So you need to control all of those. Group policies to manage user desktop and security settings. So we can create groups within the network. We can create groups. And then the groups within the network will be, for example, let's say I have IT department, I have security, I have recruiting department. Instead of assigning permissions to individuals one by one, people that are under maybe a recruitment department, instead of assigning them permissions one by one, I can assign permissions to a group. So, just like I create a group, let's say I create a group and then I call it what? I call it, let's say, recruitment. And then I assign permissions directly to what? To that group. So that when I add someone to that group, they inherit what? The permissions within that group. So when you are added to a group, whatever permissions that are assigned to that group, automatically you get those permissions. In a scenario whereby we have 100 users in our network, I can't manually assign the permissions one by one, but I can create a group and then assign permissions to the group. And then whoever is added to that group, they'll inherit the permissions of that particular group, right? So that's the group policies that we can utilize to manage networks. Okay, all right, we will expand on this where we create groups and then users and then we assign them permissions. Okay, let me see. By now, I did explain what is the TCP, right? Transmission Control Protocol. So requirements for installing Active Directory Domain Service is configure appropriate TCP, IP, and DNS server addresses. Credentials to install a new AD DS Forest, you need to be local administrator on the server. So I'll take you through that process of how to create like an AD domain. So you will see that every time when you're creating this, you need to be like an administrator. To install an additional domain controller in an existing domain, you need to be a member of the domain admins group, right? And then verify that DNS infrastructure is in place. Okay. So Active Directory Domain Services requires a DNS infrastructure. So what is a DNS? So DNS stands for Domain Name Service. So a DNS, the role of a DNS is that it resolves domain names into IP addresses. For example, when you type in google.com, so a DNS now, because computers, they only speak what digital language. So on our side, it's easy to remember google.com, facebook.com, twitter.com, but the computer doesn't understand what is that. So when you type in on your browser, google.com, the DNS will resolve that into what? An IP address and then gets converted. Let's check this practical part of it. Let's go to CMD. Command prompt on your computer. Then on the search of your computer, go to command prompt. So now what we're doing here is I can type in NSLOOKUP. NSLOOKUP, let me say control plus, how do I zoom in here? Control shift. The minute you type in, Facebook doc browser, the DNS will look at that and then try to resolve that into an IP address. Says, okay, Facebook is sitting on 102.132.104.35. And then that's when you can see the browser now displaying or rendering the page that you were visiting. All right. So the DNS, the role of the DNS is to resolve IP names, to resolve domain names into IP addresses, right? So that's what it does. Fred, what happened? My network dropped. I was having a smooth class and then my network dropped from nowhere.
I saw it, man. I was busy with it. So he was complaining that their side.
I know. That's why I moved from that side. Building 5 network is always bad.
But it's fine now.
On this side, the advanced one doesn't give me problems.
Yeah.
But now it's fine, yeah. It just dropped for a few seconds, yeah. Sharp man. All right, so we were looking at the DNS part. ADDS requires a DNS infrastructure. And then ADDS domain names must be DNS domain name. So we will go through this and then where we create like a domain name. Domain controller records must be registered in DNS to enable other domain controllers and client computers to locate the domain controllers. And then DNS zones can be stored in ADDS as Active Directory Interdicted Zone. So we're going to go through the process of creating the domains within our domain infrastructure. All right, controllers. All right, now I want to go through the creation of these. How do we have looked at on Linux how to create a username on a Linux device, on a Linux server. Now, where's my? So I am on. I'm using Windows Server 2016. So on Windows Server 2016, I just want to quickly take you through the process of creating an Active Directory, right? Or activating an Active Directory on this side. Oh, shucks. All right, Active Directory, right? Let's see. Right, so I'm on my Windows Server 2016. So I need to press Control Alt Delete. So you can see my domain name is already, I've created a domain mega.co.za. And then administrator, I need to type in my administrator account. Administrator password, I forgot my password. Okay, there it goes through. All right, once you switch on your server or log into your server, you will see this is how your server looks like, right? Yesterday we did look at a bit of some parts of the server, right? Like your local server part there. Local server part, we look at the specs of this device and then the events that are on this device. You can see I've already added this device into a domain. So my domain is maker.local. So I've created an Active Directory domain service. It's already created. And then you can see I can click the ADDS. There it shows me, this is my server that I have. And then we got those events. So I want to go back to this part where we can add more services. So every time when you want to add new roles to this service, you go to add roles, or you go to at the top there, there's a part for tools, not tools, manage.
Sir,
And then you,
can I ask you a
yeah,
question? Sorry, sir. So I
yeah,
wanted to know, this is now our server, you see, ne? So
yeah,
obviously on the server, we adding most now the domains and stuff like you say, ne? So
yeah,
when let's say I have a server and I want to obviously must now add a domain name to that server, ne? Must I
yeah.
still now pay for the hosting, like a outside company like MWeb or whoever to host now that domain name?
Yeah, to be able to access on the internet and all of these other things, you need to have like an existing domain on the internet. But if you're just like using it internal within the organization, it will run without you hosting it outside. But for any company that are going to run, you need to host it definitely, because it will be communicating or integrating with other companies. So you need to host it somewhere. But
So we
internal
can't.
uses, it will be able to run.
Oh, okay. And so there's no configuration like from internal that we can just take it out with our internet. And then let's say we don't need a hosting company, but like you said, we do still need it.
Yeah, we still need like the hosting company just for accessing the other resources, other people, communicating with other people outside of your own organization.
So,
All right. So now add roles and features. Let's see now. So this is where you go to. Let's say we want to configure the Active Directory domain services. We now know what an Active Directory domain service is, what is used for. Already is running on my side. So I can go to Active Directory services, and then it will take you through the processes here, through this information. So before you continue, verify that the following tasks have been completed. The administrator account is a strong password. The reason for that is when you're creating an Active Directory, at the end there, it will check, it will verify, it will go through the checks of the configurations that we're applying, and then it will verify that, okay, yes, it will approve the creation of the domain. But if the password is not that strong, the verification will fail. So you just have to make sure that the password that we are using, it is a strong password. Network settings such as static IP addresses are configured. Again, so on these servers, we need to configure a static IP address. I think I did that yesterday with you. So the static IP address, most of the times, if you're using this on a VM, you will have to click on it directly here. It will take you to this part. You right click it, you go to properties, TCP IPv4, and then properties. You can see I manually assigned the IP address there. Again, on the DHCP part, I think we did configure DHCP using a Cisco packet tracer. So on the DHCP part, we said there are other devices within your network that will require what? You to manually assign an IP address because they need a static IP address. So one of those devices that needs a static IP address is the server. Printers also need like a static IP address. So a static IP address, we said it doesn't change. Every day the device will use the same IP address. So I signed this, I think 2 days or 3 days ago, still using the same IP address. If you received an IP address by DHCP, that IP address is bound to change. So a server, make sure that you have to manually assign that IP address. You manually assign the IP address on the server. Okay, where was I? I think I was somewhere. Where was I? Okay, let me go back to my dashboard and then add roles. The network settings such as static, okay, the most current security updates from Windows Update are installed. So you usually be required to just update your system. As I said, that mine I don't want to update it because I'm using it for ethical hacking practices and all of that. I want to leave it vulnerable like that. And then if everything is fine, you can say next, and then role-based or feature-based installation. So most of the times what you're going to be doing is your role-based or feature-based installation. So you leave this one selected, remote desktop services, installation, install required role services for virtual. So if you want to do what we call the VDI, right, virtual desktop infrastructure, when you're creating like a virtual machine-based services, then you go to this one. But now we are not doing a VDI or a virtual machine-based services. We're going with the first one, which is role-based. And then next, so most of the time you'll be going with this one, unless if it's a VM, a virtual machine, then you can maybe do that. But most of the time we're going to be running with this role-based one. And then server selection. Here you might have, might be connected to different servers, like 15, 10, whatever number of servers that you have in your organization. But here I only have one server. You can see it picks up my server. So I don't have to select. So if there were like 4 servers that are showing up here, the one that you want to configure this on, you were supposed to select that. But currently mine, I only have one server, so it's already selected. I don't have to change that. Select a server from the server pool. So you might have more than one servers here. All right, and then next. And then here, this is where you choose the services that you want to install. This is where you choose the services. For example, if I want to add an Active Directory domain service, I select that item. Right. For example, let's say it's DHCP. Let's add a DHCP now. I will select a DHCP and then click on what? I add the features of that service. Right? But I don't want a DHCP. I don't want to do that now. So let me just say next. So this one is already selected. It's already installed. And then whatever service that you install, you selected, it comes in with its own default features. So Microsoft says, okay, in order for DHCP to work, in order for Active Domain Service to run, it needs these services. So they will select the services for you. So you don't have to uncheck. You can see Active Directory will need SMB, will need PowerShell. So all the other features that the selected service requires. So I selected Active Directory Domain Services there. It says, okay, in order for Active Directory domain service to run, it needs these services. So most of the time, you don't have to change this unless if there's a specific service that you want that is not selected by Microsoft. Then you select whatever service that you want. Right. For example, let's say maybe I want a Telnet client. I can just do that. Select it just to add that. And then do next. So, and then also here at the top, you can say, select the restart destination save automatically if required. So if there's a need, you can, the system has to, yesterday, I think we spoke about the self-healing, right? Where a system, where it fails, but it can be able to restart again and then run. Right, so you need that so that when something happens, it can easily restart and then it runs again. So I've selected that option. Optional features such as administrator might be displayed or not. Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5. 5 that are left there.
Right now.
Yeah, rows. Yeah, so let me minimize this. Yeah, so everything starts here. So you saw like the steps are not that hectic, man. Like you just select the one that you want, add rows, and then it will take you through the process. You select if you want like a DHCP or it's an Active Directory or whatever it is that you're selecting, then you activate that. Then it will do the rest for you. So you can see now it's going through the process of installing everything. Installation succeeded. Looks like I have a DHCP server. Then I can close that. Right. But now my Active Directory domain server is already running. Let me see if I can. Let's see if I, and the other thing is, you see where it says local server here, we see the events, right? You can see user 32 is there, and then all of, so it shows you the events, what is currently happening on your system. So some people don't like that part of the events showing. So you can select that event and then you can deactivate those events. You can say hide alerts, say hide alerts, but I don't want to hide the alerts for now. I need to see what is really happening within my system. So it's keeping track of what's happening. Only one. So. Okay, I have, now let's say you want to add users to a domain, Active Directory domain. Where will you go to? So there are so many ways of doing that. There are so many ways of doing that. We can do that via the PowerShell, and then also you can do it via, let's see, I just want to quickly add something. Let me see. All right, I can even go to the other part that you can go to is your control panel. So there are three ways of, let me not say three ways, there are so many ways of adding users for this system. And then I'm on administrative tools. And then for some, you will find this information. Let me just minimize them. For some systems, you will find this information. You can go to tools there at the top, and then you say computer management. And then if you go to computer management, you bring you to this page. And then here in between the device manager, performance shared tools, there will be the part for users and groups. It's just that my 2016 doesn't have, like, it doesn't bring that part there. So for some servers, you can go to computer management. There will be a part here for users and groups. So mine, it doesn't show me that part. It should be somewhere here, shares. So it might be in between the shared folders and performance here. So it's not there. So here's another way. I said I can go to control panel, and then under control panel, I can select Active Directory users and computers. See, there's the part where I can see all of my users. I have guest account. I created this account yesterday. There's also Melusi account there. There is Clint account and all of those. So you can create accounts via this part. I can even come here and then do it manually here somewhere. I can go to visit file, say new. I can click on new user. Then I can add a new user directly there. You can see I can go to action and then new, and then it says what you want to do. Computer contact. If I want to create a new group, I can create a new group. If I want a new printer, a user, or shared folder, I can create a shared folder. But we're interested in creating a user. Then we can have that user they created on that platform. So we have one user. We can apply all of the information of the users. First name, last name, full name, and everything. So, yeah. Huh?
Who started them?
We left with, isn't it like 4 then? It's empty.
Someone said we are leaving it. But the number is already there.
There are some classes. How many were you paying?
Don't know whether that's like, yeah, you need to order. That was, I don't know why they picked up these 15. Just like something, when something online, and then it just. I know what I was with. Yeah, let's take the tea break, and then when we come back, we start with actually creating a domain. So domain existing here on our network. So what we want to do is we want to add another forest to this existing domain. All right, guys online, we're taking the 15 minutes tea break, then we'll come back and continue.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So installation succeeded on Windows Server, and then let's say export configuration. Okay, I don't want to export that configuration. Okay, let's say add roles. Let me see if I can add one more Active Directory to this. Let's say that server. I want to add an existing domain to that. Okay, it doesn't want me to add. Okay, I'll fix that. I don't know why it doesn't want. So now I want to start with adding the users, right? So we have an Active Directory domain service, and then I want to see how we can add the users to this thing. We said we have, okay, 3 ways that I usually go through this, but someone might show you different ways. So for me, I use the first one. Since I already have the Active Directory services, I use either this option here, where I go to, let me start again so we can all see where we started. We started with control panel, right? And then in control panel, there's this thing that's this part here, the feature that says administrative tools. So administrative tools, then on the administrative tools, I select the Active Directory users and computers. So we have all these other utilities that you can use here, but the one that we are focusing on, the one that we want to add users on, is the Active Directory users. So you are not on Windows, you don't have Windows Server there. I'm running Windows Server. So you need to be on a Windows Server there. So if I type in here, let's say WinVer, Windows version, let's say WinVer. Check what I'm running now on my side. I'm running Microsoft Windows Server. So on your side, you don't have the server running there. I think you're running Windows. Just type in WinVer there and see what you're running. On search there, type in WinVer. It's just like for Windows version. So Win, WINVER, just to see what version of the operating system you're using. Windows 11. So Windows 11 is not a server, so it won't have these other features that I have on my side. So these, the Active Directory domain services can be configured only on the network, sorry, on the server side. The Active Directory can be configured on the server side. So what you have is Windows 11, Windows 10, Windows 7. These are called the client operating systems. This is a network operating system, which allows us to respond to different services coming from the different requests coming from the different devices within the network. So in order for you to do this, it should be a server, either server 2018, 2012, 2008, any server, you'll be able to configure the 8G/DS. I'll give you a file where you can install it there. Right, so now we're saying we are adding users to this Active Directory domain service that we have, right? So I want to add users. I said we can start, you can go via the shortcut or the easy way. You can go to manage and then you go to not manage tools, and then under tools, there's computer management. And then on computer management, here on most servers, it will show you here like the users and groups. We have a feature for users and groups. See there on my side, it doesn't have that. There should be like an option for users and groups. Since it's not there, the other way I can create users, I can go to control panel. I can go to control panel and then select administrative tools. Administrative tools, it will bring all or show me all of these administrative tools. The one that I want is the Active Directory users. And then you can see, let's say we want to create an account for Josiah on this platform. Let's go to action, or even, action, select action, and then there's new, and then we want to create a user. Let's name, let's say Josiah. Say last name, Josiah name, and then user logon name. So you can see the domain here, it will pick up your company domain name, right? So on my side, my domain was maker.local. So if your company domain will be, let's say, advanced-assessment.co.za, then this side, we can use Josiah's name. So again, when creating email addresses, there is a certain structure that each company follows. Some companies will start with your first name, and then they use the initial of what? Of your surname. Some companies just use what? Your first name only. Right? Some companies your first name only where they will use like an initial, the first letter of your surname where there are two, let's say there's two Josiah in the same organization, right? So what we do is we will say maybe Josiah, maybe there are two Josiahs in this company. We'll say Josiah.n. Maybe someone else is Josiah or Josiah, whatever surname they are using. But there should be a pattern that you follow as an administrator. Your email addresses, they should at least follow a certain pattern. You can't just have someone else is using the surname, someone is using the first name. Some is mixed, like there gotta be something that you're following there. Right, so on our side, we're gonna be following the structure. We're using your first name. And then we say next. And then here we have an option of saying user must change password at next logon, which is one of the things that is very important. Yes, the user. So we create our own password for the user. We create a password for the user, and then they will use that password for the first time, and then after that, they can change that password, like what we usually do with your the account for your teams and all of that, right? You get a password from us, and then you type in the password for the first time, and then it says, okay, change the password. So here we have that option, user must change password. And then I can also select this, user cannot change password. Say, okay, you can't change your password. You can select that option. Password never expires, account is disabled, but we want the password to expire. So we just want to leave that, it's like that. So password for Josiah, let's see what his password is. I'll say next, and then full name Josiah J, and then user log name, his email address is josiah@maker.local. The user must change the password at not log on. So we will share his email address with him and then the password, then he will make the changes there. Check here, there is the user. We have managed to add the user there. There's Josiah Jane there. He's part of the domain now. Because I say that this username and password, where is it? It's on this computer. Sorry, it's on this Active Directory. So his username and password is saved on the Active Directory. So we said he can log into any PC that is part of the domain, and then he will be able to access his resources. All right. So now that's the other way of creating an account. Let's go to another platform where we can create an account. The one that I like is Python, PowerShell. PowerShell. Yeah, it is recorded. Yeah. So now we want to look at a third way of creating an account. So I'm logged in here as an administrator. Okay, so I want to use PowerShell to create an account for, let's say now we're creating an account for Zane. Right, let's say, what's the, here's the command for that. So new local user. So the reason why I came to this PowerShell ISE, because it has IntelliSense. Like when I type in something and then I forgot how to complete the entire thing, you can see it brings up that for me. So new user local, I think new local user. Yes. And then the name of the, and I say dash name, right? And then his name, then I'll say, I'm creating an account for Zane. Right, and then that's the account. And then the description, you want to add a description for this account, right? There we go. Let's say IT in 10. And then I don't want to add a password for this account. So you can say no password. So the command is new local user dash name Zane, and then description is IT intern, and then no password. So let me see if I press enter, you can see what it says. It says name Zane, and then enabled true. So we have created an account for Zane there, and then description item. It doesn't have a password because we said no password there. You can create a password later on for this. And then sometimes you might want to check the users that are on this machine, right? How many users have you created so far? I can type in, I think this thing is case sensitive, get, is it local user? And then press enter. So you can see it shows me the existing users in this system. So we have an account for the administrator, built-in account for administrator. And then we have another account for guest, and then check here. So this is a default account. It says enabled, false. So these are default accounts that are created by Microsoft Server. And then if you want to enable it, you can enable this account. And then KRPTG, KBROS, Key Distribution Center. So this is one of the services also that is for keys, but it's not enabled now. Default account for the user managed by the system. And then I created my account. I created another account, and then all of this. So you can see these are the accounts that exist within the system. Now, let's say I want to go ahead and then create an account with a password now. So the other thing is you don't want to type in the password on the script. So you don't want to type a password on the script. So what I will do is I will encrypt the password. I need to hide that password. I'll create like a variable, put it in a variable. There is password, where's password? Okay, this is a variable. And then say password is equals to read. So at the time of the hackathon part, we were looking for passwords on the script and all of that. So when you're creating passwords, never type in a password. This is why I said no password there. I don't want this line of code to have what? To show what's the password for this guy. So now I want to come up with a way of hiding that password. Let's say secure string. So I will secure that password. You see, now it gives me this box to type in the password. Right? So the string, this is a variable. It's a variable, is a container, right? So my password that I'm going to type here is going to go away to this variable. So let's say his password is password 123. Let's say okay. So the password is created. You can't even see my password, right? So whoever like read, if they read this one, they say, okay, there's no password there. They can't see what password I used for that guy, right? And then here I have typed in the password, but it was what? Encrypted. It was hidden. So now I want to go ahead and create an account, and then this password that I created here, I want to assign to an account. So this new account that we're going to create, does it make sense what we're doing here, right? So the first code, the first one, we created user Zane's account, right? We didn't add a password there. Now, I want to create another account, but let's say now we're creating an account for Retabile. And then we say, I don't want to type in the password on the line of code. What I mean by that, let's say new local user. So we're creating a new local user there. And then maybe let's say we're creating an account for Retabile. And then dash password. So if you say dash password, next year, you're supposed to type in the password. Let's say maybe my password is password 123. But you see now, whoever looks at my line of string, they can see, okay, what's the password for Retabile? So I don't want that. So what I'm doing is, let's say that $sign and then password. So if password I typed in on this variable, right? It was typed in inside this. So I'm calling that variable here to say, okay, the password for this guy, this one is inside here. I typed it inside that container. All right. So it was typed. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same password now. So if you are reading my line of code, you can't even see what my password is. It's covered. I say as AS secure string. So we secured that string. We hid that string there. So now I'm saying the password, here is the password. So you can't see what my password is there. And then full name, and then full name we can say Tabile and dash description. And let's say HR department, which is under recruiting, say recruiting department. All right. So now here's my line of code, right? So I said new local user, Retabile, then password, then my password, I hid my password, and then dash full name, Retabile, description. So Retabile, what's your full name? The Marines, right? Let's have that. And then let's press enter if there's something wrong. Okay, you can see now, Retabile, and then enabled. Yes, it is enabled. And then description, recruitment department. Now let's check if we manage to create a user. Get local users. I want to show you the same line of code. let's say we didn't encrypt the password, right? We didn't hide the password. How is it going to look like? So we're going to bring it back again. That line, not that one. This one. Let's say now we're creating the account for Romelo now. And then we're using, let's say his password is Romelo 123. So you see, it says cannot bind parameter password. Convert the Romelo value of type system string to type. So it is forcing me to say, okay, there is no way we can type in the password that is plain text like that into on this line of code, because whoever comes after you, they can just easily read that. So that Romelo password, if your password is Romelo, we need to at least hide that password. We need at least to encrypt that password or hide it so that whoever is reading your line of code won't be able to read. So you can see there it says the problem is here, hide that password. You can't type it in a plain text. It will affect the security of this server. All right, so this is how you can create an account on a Windows server. Let me see if I left any line of code there. Okay, how do you remove a user now? Let's say you want to get rid of the user account. Let's see if it works. Remove dash local user dash name. Then you call in the user that you want to remove. Let's say we're removing Josiah's account because it's the one that doesn't have password. Let's say Josiah. Let's see if it removes that. And then we can verify that the account is gone. It was removed. You can see we don't have Josiah here. So let me share this line of code just in case you want to practice this. Let me just put it on WhatsApp and then on Teams also. Where is our WhatsApp? All right, there is the, just in case you want to practice, the code is, I've shared the code there via WhatsApp. And then also, let me just put this out in case you're watching this. So here's the line of code there. In case you'll be watching this recording, you can be able to see this via this platform. So
I checked that in as well.
to send them a message that we need the assignment. They're long overdue. And then last is IT register. Then register is IT ekugcineni ufuna DL. The best I print futhi. Because like we only had 2 days, it's supposed to be 3. Ekugcineni on everyone faka DL in red pen. And then on scan. Date yeah, 13, yeah. All right, so that's how we can create user accounts on this system. We can even go that side and check if we manage to create, but yeah, the PowerShell, this is where you can do most of the things. But some people don't like the typing the commands. They prefer the GUI, like clicking, selecting something and finding all of those. But for some of us, the go-to platform is where there are commands, right? Okay, here are my users that are created Adam. Today we created Josiah, Janice, Josiah, right? So that means we need to, sometimes we might need to refresh this thing, right? We might need to refresh. Where is refresh? Huh? Let's see if it quickly refreshes the page. Because when I refresh it, it should remove Josiah. I think we deleted. Okay, there's refresh. All right. There we go. You see, Josiah's account is gone, right? So anytime you add a user, you might need to just refresh this page to see if your actions are configured. Change. Let's look at the DHCP and see how we can do that with the DHCP. Yeah, so it's mainly for IP addresses, right? So DHCP overview, let's see. So DHCP is your dynamic host configuration protocol, right? Is a client-server protocol used on internet protocol networks for automatically assigning network configuration parameters. So the DHCP, we mainly use it for assigning IP addresses to devices. So we have two ways of assigning IP addresses to devices, which is the first one is the static, where you can manually assign IP address to devices. And then the second one is the DHCP. These slides, I got them somewhere. Okay. All right, so the concept of so when you connect let's say you come to my network and then you ask me for a user, if you ask me for my Wi-Fi name, I give you the Wi-Fi name and the password. So once your computer connects to my network, it sends out a message. So when a new client comes to the network, it broadcasts a DHCP Discover packet. So once you connect to my network, the first thing that your computer will do is it sends out a broadcast message, right, on my network. Let's say you came to my home network and then you asked me for Wi-Fi, right? I gave you my Wi-Fi name and the password. Then you type in those. So after you log in, the first thing that your computer will do is it sends out what? A discover message to say, okay, who is the DHCP in this network? I need an IP address. All right. So it sends out that message, the first message coming from your computer, you will call it a client, coming from your computer. That message, we call it what? A DHCP discover message. Right. And then once a broadcast message is a message that will be distributed to all devices on the network, right? So the DHCP will receive that message and then the DHCP will respond. So once the DHCP server receives the DHCP discover packet, it replies with offer packet. So a DHCP will receive that message. So let me put it on a drawing. I like drawing stuff. Let me see, even though I'm not that good in drawing, but I like illustrating stuff via the drawings. So let's say this is my DHCP, and then this is billings just connected to my network. So this is billings there. So billings just connected to my network. And then the minute he connects to my network, his PC will send out a first message, right? The first message will be what? Say a broadcast message. So I'm going to call it broadcast message, and then it's called a discover message. It's a discover packet. So in short, what Billings is saying, or his computer is saying, it's saying, hey, I'm looking for an IP address. I just connected to this network. Who's the DHCP in this network, right? And then there are so many devices. If it's a broadcast here, so all of these devices, if it's a broadcast, all of these devices will receive the message. So he will receive the message, he will receive the message, he will also receive the message, but they are not DHCP. This is not a DHCP, this is not a DHCP, maybe it's just a laptop. These are just clients. So they will ignore that message, all right? So let's remove them from the scenario. This guy will remove. They are going to ignore, so we remove them from the picture. All right, they ignore that first message. Now, this guy is a server, is a DHCP server, right? So let's write his name, DHCP there. So he's going to respond. So he's responding with what? With an offer. He said, hey, I have an IP address there. Which one are you looking for? I got 192.168.10.1. So it's an offer. And then this guy says, oh, I found a DHCP. He's offering me an IP address. Then my computer or Billing's computer, they will send what? Another message. It's a request. So he's requesting to use what? He said, okay, I would like to use this IP address that you gave me. Then at that point in time, the DHCP is a pool. So it will remove this IP address from what? From the pool. And then it sends out a message to this guy. This guy, the message would be what? Called an acknowledgement message. It's an ACK. He's acknowledging that. He's saying, okay, you can have that IP address. The minute he sends an ACK, that IP address is taken out from the pool. So the pool can be 192.168.10. Here it was a 10, right? And then .1. So 1 is now no longer on the pool. So we're starting from what? From 2, 4 going down, right? So 1 is taken by this device. The next device, let's say a friend of mine comes in again. They want my username, they want my Wi-Fi name and my password. Then checks with the DHCP server a message, and the DHCP server has an offer. And then my guy is what? A request, an error, and then DHCP does what? An ACK, right? An acknowledgement message. So that's the process of the DHCP. That's how the DHCP works within the network. So we say when a client comes to the network, it broadcasts a DHCP discover message packet to find the DHCP server in the network. Once it finds it, the DHCP server receives the DHCP discover packet. It replies with offer packet. It says, hey, here's a packet. Here's an IP address. And then once the client selects the offer, it broadcasts a DHCP request to the DHCP server. And then once DHCP server receives the DHCP request, it stores the IP address client information in the DHCP database and broadcasts what? A DHCP ACK message, an acknowledgement message. So here's the concept that we're going through. There's a DHCP server. Hey, I'm new in network, right? And then it says what? Broadcast DHCP discover. And then it sends out its information. So the laptop will send this information, which is a MAC address. And then the DHCP says, I've received your packet. Right? I'm sending you what? An offer. Here's an offer. Comes in with 192.168.1, and then maybe it's a whatever 10, whatever IP address, and then subnet mask, and then the default gateway. And then And then this guy says, I like your offer. I'm requesting you to list me offered address, right? That is that request part, request. And then DHCP database. Okay, I've updated the record in my database. So he's acknowledging, sends an acknowledge message to say, sure, you can use that IP address. And then on my database, I've updated my database that 192.168.1.1 is assigned to someone else. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so now because your range router, it comes in with the default IP addresses, range, everything. So you can change that, assign it a new range and say, okay, range says, okay, the default IP address is 192.168.10. something. Then I change that from a .10 to something else. You can definitely change that. And then all of your devices now, when they're receiving an IP address from a DHCP range router, they'll be receiving what you assigned instead of using what came in with the router. So you can change that. Yeah. So that can be changed. Let me see. I think I do have something that I can just go through what you're talking about there. All right, so we have something called a scope, is a consecutive range of possible IP addresses that the DHCP server can release. So a scope, you need to have a scope where IP addresses that the DHCP server can lease to clients on a subnet. Scope typically defines a single physical subnet. So yes, you can create a scope. So a scope, this is where the the DHCP server will be taking IP addresses from. Let's see. All right, we spoke about the lease. So IP addresses that are coming from the DHCP, they are leased, right? You get the IP address for a period of time. Lease renewal process, lease renew request, all right? Let me see if I can get something, TP link. Right, so let's say you got your router from TP-Link, right? So on the router of your TP-Link, it shows you the wired clients, so you can see who's connected to your network. Wireless clients, it shows you who are the wireless devices on your network. And then internet port, username, password, the profile name. I can go to advanced. Let me go straight to advanced. Right, so here's on the LAN settings. Here's what you're asking, right? So yes, at home, let's say IP address is what? This is the default IP address. You can see the DHCP server. So this is the DHCP server default for the TP-Link router, home router. So IP address, I can change from the default, maybe make it what? Make it 10. And then that means everything, you see at the bottom there, it picks up everything. Says your IP address pool is what? 192.168.10.100. This is the DHCP server. And then the pool is starting from 100 to what? 199. So that means this device, how many devices can connect to this network if your DHCP pool is like this? 99 devices, right? So more than that, you can't take it. And then address list time, you can see minute, you can choose. Remember, we said IP address that are coming from the DHCP server, those are list, like you're not going to use the same IP address all the time. And then default gateway, there is information. If there's a DNS, you type in the information of a DNS. It can be whatever IP address, primary DNS and secondary. So yes, you can change your DHCP server, can reconfigure it to whatever range that you want. All right, and then be on the lookout for this, because the reason why they say 100 to 199 is because these home routers, there's a number of devices that can connect to that device without it starting to give you the network failures and all of those things. So if you make it like maybe more than, let's say, 300, 500 devices connected to the home router, you find that most people will be complaining about what? The network being slow and all of that. So it says I can only take up to 99 devices. So this might be the standard number or the approved number of devices that can connect there. All right, so this is the DHCP. And then we have what we call address reservation, right? Address reservation, you can reserve IP addresses. Let's say an IP address that you want to reserve. For example, here, why would you want to reserve IP addresses? We are reserving IP addresses for devices that you are manually going to assign them IP addresses to. So here it wants me to type in a MAC address. I don't have a MAC address to add here. And then default. So reserved IP addresses, let me just get a fake MAC address. Just any MAC address. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Now recently, where the fiber is connectivity. We go out there and stuff like that. It's no more internet running. So my suggestion was put in the cable, because you plug in the cable what into the router, it actually go on to show that is receiving something, yeah. So, all of it, but the one check, and it's still in the so, yeah. Okay, I tried to copy a MAC address and it says invalid MAC address. Okay, the reason why I say invalid, sometimes it wants it to be like this. Let's see. But you at home, you don't have to type in the MAC address directly there. You can connect the device to your network, and then you just get to copy the MAC address of the device. So, all right, yeah, it was complaining about that dash. Now, I have reserved a 10, an IP address, so it won't issue out that IP address. That IP address will be reserved for that particular device. Once it connects, then it will use that IP address. But yeah, definitely, this is a DHCP. You can play around with this and then make some few changes. If you want to create like a guest network, there's your guest network there. Allow guests to see each other, allow guests to access my local network, bandwidth control. So you can control the bandwidth of how much data they're getting, my guest there, and enable that. And then, yeah, there are so many network, net forwarding, and then security, access control. So devices in blacklist, I can block devices. Or if you're blacklisted, that means you are blocked from my network. If you do a whitelist, so a whitelist is the best way to use as a control to do. So a whitelist is you are approving. So if your MAC address is not part of my whitelist, even though you get access to my username, my password, you will connect to my network, but won't access internet. So the whitelist will say, okay, these are the devices that are allowed in my network. Then I'm whitelisting. Then, so unknown device online, you can have this and then say, okay, whitelist, these are the guys that are allowed in my network. If I'm blacklisting, I'm saying, hey, this guy, I don't want them. The problem with the blacklist, someone else who gains access to your network, they can, like, let's say they get like a username and they get the password for your Wi-Fi name. They can connect to your network. Because when you're blacklisting what you know already on my network. Then I can blacklist those. But the whitelist now, I'm saying if you're not on my whitelist, then you get my password. You won't be able to connect to my network. So it's the most control that is more power here is the whitelist. So I can whitelist. So we use the blacklist and whitelist also in applications. So we, like, for example, people that go to these other sites where they download movies, the torrent sites and all of that. So if I whitelist, that means anything that I don't know, any site, any torrent site that I don't know, you won't be able to access it because I whitelisted. I said, okay, this is what is allowed in my network. If you come up with something, some people would blacklist. So if I'm blacklisting torrent sites, it means that I'm blocking the ones that I know or the ones that I've seen in my network. What about the ones that I don't know of? Someone in my network still has access to that. So the base control is the whitelist. Anything that I didn't define, that I didn't add on my whitelist, it won't be. What I wanted to do was this part. So this is how you add it. Let me use my machine. This is how you add a system to. This is how you can add your system to an existing domain. So once I log into my Windows 10, supposed to type in this command. Let me just put it here. Sysdm sysdm.cpl. So that's the command that you type in here, and then it will invoke this file sysdm. Then it will invoke this file. And this is the file that you have on that Windows 10. And then computer description, you need to give it a name, at least assign it a name, computer name, let's say. So that, or that's on Active Directory Domain Services, we know what PC is that one. And then once it has a name, you need to come here and change some few things because right now it's part of a work group. We need to put it on a domain. But there's one thing, sometimes if your operating system is a Windows home version, the home version can't join a domain. So your version should be at least like a Pro, Ultimate, Enterprise. That's when you can join a domain. So mine here, let me check what am I? So you can see I'm running Windows 11, and then this is a home edition. This is a home edition. You can see the Windows 11 home sync language. So if I click here where it says change, you can see the domain, joining a domain is grayed out. So if your operating system is a home domain or a home version, just know that you won't be able to join a domain. That's why when I was installing this one, I made sure that it becomes what, a pro or either ultimate or enterprise version, then you can be part of a domain. So mine is a home, it can't join. But this one, we're supposed to be able to join. It's just that I forgot the password. I've been using too many passwords now. But once you're running your setup, just know that when you are joining this Windows 10 to a domain, you type in this, or you can just go to System Properties. Just go to your System Properties, even if, let's say, System Properties. Space way to invoke it via on this side. Then you do that and then say change. And change there, and then you select join a domain, member of a domain, then you can do that, join a domain. All right, guys online, I think I'm done for today. Right, today is what? We have class tomorrow.